Have you ever wondered why a man who loved someone for 12 years would ultimately be the one to send her away? A 49-year age gap, 12 years spent together, and a figure of 20 million Hong Kong dollars that followed the young woman for 8 long years, mentioned everywhere she went. On July 16, 2026, that man drew his final breath at the age of 89. He was just over 3 weeks away from turning 90. Yet it wasn't until 4 days later that the public across Asia learned of his death. And by the time the announcement came, everything had already been taken care of. What did the Tsai family do during those 4 days? What was the truth behind that $20 million figure? And why did the man who once defied the entire world to keep her by his side eventually become the very person who pushed her away? Today, join Star of Asian as we reopen the complete romantic history of one of the most controversial actors in the history of Chinese language entertainment. To understand why this relationship was so different, we must begin with the 4 women who had already passed through his life before her. The central figure in today's story was born Tsai Kayuk on August 9, 1936 in Guangzhou. He was the 4th child in his family, and that became the origin of the nickname that followed him throughout his life, Tsai Gor, meaning 4th brother. As political and social turmoil swept through the region, his family migrated to Hong Kong. In 1952, when he was just 16 years old, the teenage Tsai Kayuk enrolled in the acting training program at Ling Kwang Film Company. Only 2 years later, he was already standing in front of the camera under the stage name that would remain with him for the next 7 decades, Patrick Tsai Yin. With his commanding height, sharply defined features, and above all, a pair of irresistibly romantic eyes, Patrick Tsai quickly became the idol of millions of young women. During the 1960s, the salary he earned from a single film was enough to buy a villa in one of Hong Kong's most prosperous neighborhoods. He appeared in more than 100 films. His role as Lo Se Hoi in the 1980s gambling television drama The Shell Game became iconic. In 2001, he appeared in Shaolin Soccer. In 2019, he received the Lifetime Achievement Award at the Hong Kong Film Awards. But the brightest moment of his career came when he was already 85 years old. In 2022, the entire auditorium rose to its feet and applauded without end as his name was announced as the winner of Best Actor for the film time. He became the oldest Best Actor winner in the history of Chinese language cinema. That was his career. His private life, however, played out like a long-running romantic drama, with a different woman walking out the door in every episode. The first was Patsy Ka-ling, whose real name was Ho Pui-ying, a glamorous and elegant film star, and they met at the very place we mentioned earlier. In 1953, the 18-year-old actress was accepted into Ling Kwang's acting training program in the same class as Patrick Tsai. The two later moved together to Tik Wah Film Company, where they co-starred in the 1955 film The Strange Case of 3 Wives. They then joined Kong Eun-gi Film Company at the invitation of director Chun Kim. Before long, they became one of the silver screen's most beloved golden couples, and their on-screen chemistry eventually turned into a real-life romance. That relationship lasted for 7 long years. Patsy Ka-ling looked after every detail of his daily life, from his meals and sleep to his overall well-being, while quietly supporting his career behind the scenes. At the time, all of Hong Kong believed that a wedding of the century was only a matter of time, but the tragedy lay in one painful difference between them. She longed for the security and recognition of marriage, while he stood at the very height of fame and had no desire to be tied down. Year after year, he kept her waiting. By the late 1960s, after enduring more heartbreak than she could bear, Patsy Ka-ling played her final card. She told him that a Thai businessman was pursuing her and wanted to marry her. She said it with one fragile hope, that he would become jealous, that he would panic, and that he would finally ask her to stay. But Patrick Tsai, carrying the pride of a heartthrob who had never been rejected, replied with complete indifference, "Then go ahead and marry him." With a single thoughtless sentence, he destroyed their 7-year relationship with his own hands. Not long afterward, Patsy Ka-ling announced her retirement, married the businessman, and moved with him to Thailand. It was only when the arrogant playboy received her wedding invitation that he realized he'd lost the most precious jewel of his life. Decades later, in his twilight years, he still admitted that the fault had been his. He'd been too consumed by a life of pleasure, and he'd failed to appreciate her. The second woman was Josephine Xiao Fong Fong, the star celebrated as the youthful goddess of Hong Kong cinema. They met on the set of The Golden Gull when she was 22 and he was already 33. At Kongji, she was his junior at the same studio. She was highly educated, disciplined, and never allowed herself to remain idle. She urged him to spend less time going out, to read more books, study English, and invest in his future. From the outside, the two appeared deeply in love. But no one could truly restrain a romantic wanderer like Patrick Tsay, nor could anyone force him to change too much. The breaking point came one evening. He invited her to go dancing at a nightclub. She refused, handed him an English book, and asked him to stay home and study with her. He pushed the book aside and said irritably that he was going out, while she could stay home and study by herself. A few days later, Josephine Xiao packed her belongings, cut off all contact, and flew directly to the United States to continue her education. Patrick Tsay later told the press, "She was far too good, while I was nothing more than a wandering playboy who did not deserve her." The third woman came from across the Taiwan Strait. In 1970, while filming Ti Ying, Patrick Tsay met Chen Chen, the reigning Jade Maiden of Taiwanese cinema, and immediately launched an intense campaign to win her heart. It took him 4 years to receive the answer he wanted. In March 1974, despite her mother's objections, the two secretly registered their marriage in Hong Kong. For the first time in his life, the wild horse agreed to wear the bridle called marriage. But the honeymoon had barely begun when a storm arrived. Its name was Liu Chiachang, a brilliant Taiwanese musician who had carried an unrequited love for Chen Chen since she was very young. He openly declared war, followed her from Taiwan all the way to Japan, and the media treated the story like a goldmine. The tragedy reached its breaking point because of the pride both of them carried. When Patrick Tsay saw photographs of his wife appearing alongside Liu Chiachang in Japanese newspapers, he called and demanded that she fly back to Hong Kong immediately. Chen Chen refused. In a burst of anger, he threatened her. "If you don't come back, then we'll get divorced." Refusing to back down, she answered coldly, "Then let's get divorced." In 1977, their fairy tale marriage officially came to an end. Patrick later recalled that after signing the divorce papers, he drove himself to the top of Victoria Peak, looked down over the whole of Hong Kong, and cried like a child. The fourth woman was Deborah Lee, a beauty blessed with both striking looks and a fiercely independent personality. When friends warned her that Patrick Tsay was a former playboy whose glory days were behind him and whose debts were piling up, and that he was even rumored to be incapable of fathering children, she boldly declared to the media that she would not only marry him, but would also give him a wonderful son and prove everyone wrong. In 1979, they held a wedding that cost more than 2 million Hong Kong dollars, an almost unimaginable amount at the time. 1 year later, Nicholas Tsay was born. 2 years after that came Jennifer Tsay. At that point, the picture of the perfect model family in Hong Kong entertainment seemed complete. But human nature is often the hardest thing to change. The thrill of gambling still ran through Patrick's blood. Deborah Lee, a practical perfectionist, gradually became exhausted from constantly cleaning up the chaos her husband left behind. In 1995, she was the one who asked for a divorce. What stunned the press was the scene that followed after the paperwork was completed. There was no bitterness, no tears, and no battle over property. The moment they received the official certificate, the two embraced and congratulated each other on finally being free. Honestly, at this point, I have to admit that there's something very unusual about Patrick Tsay's story. 4 women, 4 breakups, and not one of them spoke badly about him after leaving. Not a single one. After that marriage, Patrick Tsay declared that he'd never marry again. He wanted to live entirely for himself, free to wander wherever life took him, never stopping for anyone. As he entered his 60s, people assumed that Fourth Brother's long journey through love had finally reached its last station. They were wrong. The woman who would one day make him abandon his vow never to stop for anyone was still attending elementary school in Henan when he made it. Shanghai, 2005. There are several different versions of what happened that night. Some sources say it was in a bar, others claim it was a cafe during a cold Shanghai winter. Still other accounts say they were introduced by friends and shared lunch together. But every version agrees on one detail. A young woman was sitting there alone. Her name was Coco, a young woman from Henan who'd moved to Shanghai to work as a model. She had just turned 20. Her face still carried the untouched innocence of a teenage girl, but her eyes looked empty. Her first love, innocent and intense, had ended in betrayal. Then a man entered her line of sight. He wore a perfectly tailored suit, his signature dark sunglasses, and silver hair. Yet he still carried an unusually magnetic presence. According to the most widely repeated version of the story, in the bitter Shanghai cold, he opened his leather coat and let her warm her hands inside it. It may be difficult to imagine, but that man was already 69 years old. 49 years. That was the age difference between them, wide enough to place them in the generations of grandfather and granddaughter. Coco was even 5 years younger than his son, Nicholas Tsay. When paparazzi photographed the two walking hand in hand through the streets, the entire Chinese language entertainment industry seemed to explode. The press published its cruelest headlines: an old ox grazing on tender grass, a Chinese expression mocking an older man for dating a much younger woman, a grandfather-granddaughter romance, a fame-hungry young woman, and a lustful old man. Coco's family immediately and fiercely opposed the relationship. The public simply sat back and waited to see how many months this spectacle would last. But they had forgotten who Fourth Brother was. He was a man who'd spent half a century living in open defiance of public opinion. Standing in the center of the storm, Patrick Tsay made no attempt to hide. He openly hugged and kissed Coco in the street, brought her onto major television programs, and declared without hesitation that love was not a crime and had no age limit. As long as two people were sincere, he said, no one had the right to judge them. Looking only at the number 49, it was easy to conclude that the relationship was nothing more than an exchange. Money and fame in return for youth. That was the judgment nearly all of Asia reached less than a week after the first photographs appeared. The problem was that the next 12 years would prove the exact opposite. The first thing Patrick Tsay did was not buy her a house or a car. He paid for her to study in England so she could improve her English and learn a profession of her own. 40 years earlier, a woman had handed him an English book, and he had pushed it aside to go dancing at a nightclub. 40 years later, he was the one paying to send a 20-year-old woman overseas to continue her education. Some lessons take a person half a century to finally learn. As for Coco, she didn't live like a sheltered girlfriend who was simply being taken care of. For years, she looked after Patrick's daily needs, took him to medical appointments, and remained by his side whenever his health took a turn for the worse. By the time a man reaches 70 and then 80, what he needs is no longer another night at a nightclub. What he needs is someone who knows which medication he must take and at what time. And for 12 years, the person who knew those details was a woman 49 years younger than he was. What bothered the public most wasn't that they loved each other. It was that they made no attempt to hide it. They held hands while shopping and ate dinner at restaurants where everyone recognized his face. In 2008, when Patrick was filming a television program, Coco personally went to the studio to support him. For a man who'd spent 7 decades beneath the glare of camera flashes, this wasn't recklessness. It was a defiant declaration of their love in the face of every social prejudice surrounding them. One detail wasn't revealed until April 2026, when Coco shared it herself on social media. While Patrick was pursuing her, he borrowed jewelry from his daughter, Jennifer Say, so he could give it to Coco and win her affection. A man approaching 70, once the ultimate symbol of charm and romance for an entire generation, asking his own daughter to lend him jewelry so he could court a 20-year-old woman. It was funny, a little pitiful, and at the same time, proof of just how serious he was. The second story wasn't funny at all. Coco once lost a large sum of money through an investment, and to help her repay the debt, Patrick Tsay sold the Rolls-Royce his son had given him. But the real fracture began with a rumor. In 2016, reports spread through the media that Coco was pregnant. For a couple who had already spent 11 years together, it should have been happy news. But Patrick stepped forward to deny it. He made it clear that the two of them would not have children. Not that they didn't have children yet. They would never have them. That answer ended the rumor, but it also unintentionally opened a deep divide between them. Coco was 31 at the time. She had reached the stage in life when almost any woman might begin thinking about a home, a marriage certificate, and a child. And this was something almost no one knew for many years afterward. For a long time, rumors circulated within the entertainment industry that Patrick Tsay had undergone a sterilization procedure years earlier, during the reckless and indulgent days of his youth. Neither he nor his family ever confirmed this. But if it was true, then for 11 years, every time Coco brought up the subject of children, he was the only person in the room who already knew the answer. Telling her would have caused her even more pain. Remaining silent meant carrying the full weight of public blame. He chose the second option, and he kept that secret until the day he died. Beyond the question of children, there was another wall Coco was never able to cross. It must be made clear that this part comes from industry speculation and has never been confirmed by the Tsay family. But it has been repeated so many times that it cannot simply be ignored. According to those reports, although Nicholas Tsay always appeared to respect his father's choices in public, he never truly allowed Coco into the family's inner circle. She might appear at a few events, but most of the time, she simply walked quietly beside Patrick and watched from a distance. The rumors also suggested that Coco understood this perfectly well. She rarely gave interviews, avoided direct confrontation, and always remained cautious and reserved during gatherings with Patrick's family. It wasn't because she failed to understand the situation, it was because she understood it all too well. For 12 years, she was the most important woman in his life, yet she remained an outsider in his home. That was a distance no amount of money could ever close. For 12 years, they'd overcome public judgment. They'd even overcome his family's coldness. The one thing they couldn't overcome was the clock beating inside his chest. As Patrick entered his 80s, his health began to decline noticeably. The physically demanding activities he'd once been able to handle were now beyond his reach. Coco, meanwhile, had only just entered her 30s. She was in the most radiant and mature years of a woman's life. They were walking along the same road, but moving in opposite directions. Then came one morning in 2018. That day, they decided to go hiking together. It was an ordinary activity, the kind thousands of couples in Hong Kong did every weekend. But after climbing for a while, Patrick could no longer keep up. The 82-year-old man had to grip the railing as he struggled to catch his breath. And while he stood there breathing heavily, he said something to her. "You can't treat me as though I'm someone your own age." At first, it might sound like a complaint spoken in frustration, but it wasn't an accusation. It was an admission, and perhaps it was the cruelest thing a man could ever say to the woman he loved. On July 3, 2018, at an event in Hong Kong, reporters surrounded Patrick Tsay and pressed him about rumors that his relationship was falling apart. He didn't avoid the question. He confirmed that the two of them had separated. At the age of 82, he ended the longest relationship of his life with just a few brief sentences in front of the cameras. He said he no longer wanted to marry and that he didn't want to hold her back or cost her the best years of her life. The words sounded familiar. 40 years earlier, he'd said almost the same thing about Josephine Xiao. But this time there was one fundamental difference that no one seemed to notice. The first time, he said those words after being left behind. This time, he said them as the one doing the leaving. Near the end of 2018, there was a dinner in Hong Kong. It wasn't a private meal between the two of them. A group of close friends had traveled to Hong Kong and everyone arranged to meet. 8 years later, when Coco looked back on that evening, she said, "I had absolutely no idea it would be the last time." In the middle of dinner, Patrick Tsay turned toward her and held her tightly. He told her that after this separation, neither of them knew when they would ever see each other again. Then he told her something that still brings her to tears every time she remembers it. He said that if she ever met a good man in the future, she should bring him to meet Patrick. And even if Patrick was no longer in this world, he would still rise from somewhere, somehow, to protect her. Those were the words of a father speaking to his daughter. They weren't the words of a man speaking to his former lover. There were no photographs of an argument or a struggle captured by the paparazzi. A 12-year relationship that had once shaken all of Hong Kong ended quietly, just like that. But the public was anything but quiet. The moment news of the breakup spread, a wave of criticism came crashing down on Patrick Tsay. People called him heartless. They said he'd taken advantage of a young woman's entire youth, kept her beside him for 12 years, and then, when he became old and frail, simply walked away without ever giving her the status of a wife. At the same time, Coco wasn't spared either. She was branded a calculating fame seeker who'd made the wrong gamble, sacrificed 12 years of her life, and ultimately walked away with nothing. It took a long time before people began fitting the pieces together and understanding what Patrick may actually have been thinking. In one of the rare interviews he gave near the end of his life, Patrick Tsay said he was already over 80 and could die at any moment. If he married her, then on the day he closed his eyes for the last time, she would become a widow at 40. He said that would be far too cruel for a woman who still had an entire lifetime ahead of her. He chose to let her hate him, rather than force her to bury him. But that explanation came too late. As early as 2018, the media had already begun circulating reports that Coco had received a breakup payment worth as much as 20 million Hong Kong dollars. One version claimed the money came from Patrick Tsay. Another claimed that Nicholas Tsay had personally stepped in on his father's behalf and paid the amount to bring the relationship to a final end. No one confirmed it, but almost no one questioned it either. That number became a convenient explanation for everyone. It turned 12 years into a contract. It reduced a woman to a price tag. For 8 years, the figure of 20 million became the final judgment the public stamped onto Coco's life. In 2019, reporters once spotted the two of them having dinner together at a restaurant. They were still gentle with each other, still polite, just as they had always been. The photograph immediately became the center of attention, and many began asking whether the couple had reunited. But after that dinner, they were never seen together again. Perhaps it was simply a proper goodbye delivered a year late. After that, Coco almost completely disappeared, carrying with her all the regret, along with a public judgment she'd never been given the chance to defend herself against. It wasn't until 2026 that she returned. This time, she didn't reappear on a red carpet or the cover of a magazine. She returned through social media. She began sharing memories from those 12 years, including the story about the jewelry Patrick had borrowed from his daughter to court her. Then, during a live stream in February of that year, she addressed the $20 million claim directly. She denied it. She said that throughout their 12 years together, they had shared the same bank account. There had never been any situation in which one person gave money to the other. She said her finances were now completely ordinary, and that she was supporting herself through the very live stream her audience was watching. Then came July 2026. During the final years of his life, Patrick Tsay had become extremely frail. According to accounts that emerged later, by around 2025, he was suffering from severe cognitive decline. Actor Ha Yu recalled that when he visited Patrick in the hospital, his old friend of many years no longer recognized him. Chen said Patrick would repeatedly ask the same question and could no longer remember the names of people he had once known. His final public appearance came in April 2026. His face was deeply sunken and his body had grown painfully thin. On July 16th, he drew his final breath. According to the Hong Kong press, the cause was pneumonia. His family said only that his health had been deteriorating for a long time. It wasn't until 4 days later, on July 20th, that Nicholas Tse and Jennifer Tse made the news public. According to reports from the Hong Kong media, during those 4 days, the family had quietly completed the entire funeral in accordance with Patrick's final wishes. No funeral hall was rented, and no public wake was held. There was only a simple ceremony at the hospital, followed by a direct transfer to the Wo Hop Shek crematorium in Fanling. On the official registration documents, they didn't write the name that had shown across Asian screens for 70 years. They wrote the name he'd been given at birth, Tse Ka Yuk. Only 3 people were confirmed to have been present at the crematorium: Nicholas Tse, Jennifer Tse, and Deborah Lee. The former wife, who divorced him 31 years earlier, was the only woman there to see him off. According to Hong Kong media reports, his notarized will left approximately 90% of an estate worth more than 100 million Hong Kong dollars to his 2 grandchildren, to be managed on their behalf until they came of age. The remaining 10% was divided equally between his 2 biological children. Sources disagreed over who had been appointed to manage the assets, and Nicholas Tse's management company publicly denied some of the claims that were circulating. But every version agreed on one thing: Coco's name was not in the will. Not a single dollar was left to her. Far from the cameras trained on the Tse family, a woman quietly changed every profile picture on her social media accounts to black. A few days later, she appeared on a live stream. She was dressed in black, her eyes swollen, her voice hoarse as she spoke to those watching and thanked them for the love they had shown him. 8 years after their breakup, she still hadn't married and still had no children. When asked about it, she simply said that the right person hadn't yet come into her life. She said she would always be grateful to Patrick and that she'd long considered him a member of her own family. Now, 41 years old, she had returned to her hometown in Henan and was earning a living by selling products through live streams. Honestly, when I reached this detail, I had to check the sources several times, because it contradicted everything I, and perhaps you as well, had believed for all those years. After everything, the supposedly heartless man turned out to be someone who'd chosen to carry all the blame, so that she wouldn't have to become a widow at 40. And the supposed gold digger, the woman all of Asia believed had walked away with 20 million Hong Kong dollars, was now sitting in front of a phone screen, supporting herself through live streaming and telling her viewers that the money had never existed. The public had passed judgment on both of them, and it had been wrong both times. The irony was that neither of them ever bothered to appeal the verdict. His son once said that during his lifetime, Patrick Tse often repeated the same phrase: "The show must go on." He asked the audience not to cry or lose themselves in grief, because if fourth brother saw those tears, he'd probably tease them for losing their composure. Perhaps that was also what Patrick had told Coco during their final dinner, only in a different way: that she should keep going, that her show still had a long way to go, and that he couldn't stay on stage with her until the end. The story of Patrick Tse and Coco leaves us with one final question: is letting someone go the highest form of love? Or is it simply a beautiful way of describing an escape from responsibility? And if it were you, would you stay and care for the person you love until their final breath? Or would you let them go while they still had time to begin again? Share your thoughts in the comments below. For now, goodbye, and I'll see you again next time.